things that might be a little uncomfortable, but certainly a conversation that I think many are having behind closed doors. And so it's a conversation I want to bring out into the open as well. That perhaps there are some things that we can put forward here that might be helpful to you. Excuse me. So I want you to think back 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, when the world was a different place, and things that you thought were reliable, perhaps you're finding out are not as reliable as you had hoped. So, for example, I've got friends here in Wichita who work for the aircraft companies who are furloughed 4 weeks, no pay. I've got some who are furloughed with an indefinite time frame on that. I've got people who their businesses are non-essential, and so they've had to shut their doors. And even some of those whose businesses are considered essential are finding drastic reductions in their business. And even in our consulting business, so my wife and I both have consulting businesses as part of the mix of what we do. We're seeing clients that are having to reduce who are having to cut expenditures, who are having to, change their business structure and some of the things that they do. And so with that, what we're finding is people are beginning to see where they were vulnerable, not just in business, but even at home. It's interesting, my dad was the head disaster recovery planner for Bank of America up until he retired in 2010 or 11, or maybe, 2009. And I remember him talking about, bird flu and SARS and other things that could be very disruptive. And he would allude at times to these places where things we take for granted might not be available. Groceries that we buy at our grocery store might not be available. Household goods might not be available. Fuel might not be available. Job uncertainty, income uncertainty, all of those types of things. And so the thing that's very interesting is I always listened to what he had to say, and I took some of that to heart. And so even in my preparations for those rainy days, and let me just preface that, having lived through tornado and hurricane and 9/11, took steps to always make sure we were prepared. What's interesting is I'm finding that there were holes in my preparation. I never imagined a situation like we're in right now, where most of us are confined to our homes. We feel good. We don't have, mass chaos in the streets. And so it seems normal, and yet it's not normal, because we can't go and do the things that we've normally been doing. I can't go and shop freely. There's certain things that if I go to the store today, they're only going to let me buy a limited quantity of this, or the shelves might be empty. I can't go to my bank lobby and ask my teller for some cash. I'm limited in what I can do. And so here's the concern that I have. I'm not sure we've seen the worst of it. And I don't mean to be a doomsdayer, but I also know that as we come through this time of people not having an income, as we come through this time of supply disruptions, that there are some dominoes that begin to fall. Now, obviously, the government has done what it felt was appropriate with the stimulus package. There will be money, beginning to come to households and businesses and things like that. But it's not a long-term solution. And that's the real, piece of this discussion I want to have with you. If you are finding that there are some vulnerabilities in what was once reliable, in fact, what I really wanted to have you think about is the way you provide for your home and your family. There are things that you thought maybe you could count on that right now you just really can't. So let's talk again kind of openly here. What a lot of people are now looking at is, well, I need to migrate to an online business. And that's a wonderful concept, except it doesn't take into account the learning curve. So I run the majority of our businesses online. What people don't see is the long learning curve that's had to go into that. I started that learning curve in 2009, and we didn't really fully hit our stride with that for several years. And because technology is always changing, just as soon as you learn one thing, you have to adapt and modify and learn something else or learn how to deal with the change. Oh yeah, Yannick, it's happening here as well. So not just where you're at, it's happening worldwide. So there is an extreme learning curve that comes with that. It's not that it can't be done, but is it to where it can produce immediate results for you? Maybe not. One of the things that people are going to be looking at is home-based business opportunities. And so there are some that will make sense because they fall into that category of essentials. But where a lot of these businesses are going to struggle is, again, it's back to a learning curve. It's back to, now I've got to learn how to sell. I've got to learn how to deal with, customer rejection when people tell me no. And I've got to have the perseverance to stick that through long enough to make things work. And so for the average person, that's probably not the best solution, although within that, and I'm painting with a very broad brush, within that environment, there certainly are things that a person could do now that are essential, that would make a difference very quickly in the way that they're able to navigate through this coming season. A couple of other things that I want you to consider is some of the businesses that people have looked to as franchises and some of the brick and mortar kind of things may not be as viable going forward as well. Part of what I think we're going to see happen, and again, I'm not a fortune teller, so this is one man's opinion, but we are entering into a new economy where things are going to be done differently. And so part of what you're wanting to do is you want to think ahead, what does this look like in the days to come? And for two purposes. Number one, what adjustments am I going to have to make? But as a business owner, you want to look at then what are some of the trends I need to get out in front of, or how do I change up my business to get out in front of those? Or is there a component that's just not even in my entire mix right now? I'm a one-trick pony, and my pony isn't going to run in this environment, so how do I bring some other things along? And that's what a lot of business owners are finding, is their business is very one-dimensional. And because it's one-dimensional, if that dimension is getting hammered right now, it's an extreme pain point. Now, I'm going to tell you, we have multiple dimensions in what we do here, but that's not telling you that everything is hunky-dory in every dimension. There are some of the dimensions of our business right now that I know, at least for the near future, 60, 90 days, probably are not going to be anything I can really depend on, nor are they going to be super stable. So I'm having to ramp up and focus heavier on the things that are more essential, that are more in line with the consumer mentality right now. Where are people going to spend their money, and what kinds of things are they going to spend them on? Because right now they are conserving. And so if I'm asking you to come out and spend $1,000 on a course where I'm going to teach you something that might make you money in the next 3 to 5 years, that's not going to be helpful to you. If I'm asking you to go into debt to make a purchase of a business or a service or a good, a consumable item, a consumer item, I'm probably going to be struggling with that, because what people are needing is essential things right now. They need to stay within their constraints of what they're willing to spend right now. The reality is, even with the stimulus package, it is an injection for the moment. And as I said yesterday, it's actually an advance on next year's tax refund if you get a tax refund. It's only going to get you so far. I don't know too many households that can survive even a month on just what the stimulus package is. So it's not a long-term solution. So here's one of the things that I want to offer out to you. If you are part of my audience, you're one of my friends, you're in the U.S. or Canada, and the reason why I'm putting that caveat there, some of the solutions that I can bounce off of you are not going to work in other parts of the world. You've got to have the infrastructure, you've got to have some of the societal norms that are here in the U.S. and Canada. But here's what I'm wanting to do. I consult with a lot of business owners on how to make things work in their business. I consult with a lot of individuals on how to find successful, ways of moving forward in life using biblical principles. Normally, I charge for those consultations. What I'm willing to do right now, just because I want to give back to the people who need it now, people who are feeling quite vulnerable right now, is give you some ideas of some things that are working in our household right now, things that you can implement right now, things that, if you will be diligent, will help sustain you, not just here in the immediate future, but actually may create a new window for you that you didn't even know you had. So when I became homeless 10 years ago, 11 years ago with my family, and if you don't know the backstory, we started a ministry in South Texas, lived by faith, lost everything. And in that losing everything, God led us through a process of reinventing the way we went about funding our household, the way we went about our daily work, the way we went about a lot of things, and actually opened up a whole new world that was not even part of our lives prior to that. So, 40 years of age, I'm reinventing myself, but it was the necessary step. And then when I look at where we are today, it's the one thing that's allowed me to continue to move forward, even in these last 2 weeks, when others are having to contract and pull back. So anyway, if I can be of help to you, here's what I'm offering to you. 20 to 30 minutes of my time. I will just hear what's going on with you, where you see that there are some vulnerabilities. I'll help you think through some pivot points where maybe this is an adjustment you need to make. And I'll show you what we're doing. And if it makes sense for you, then great, implement it, and let's work together to make sure that in this season you don't drown, that you actually come out well, and that you come out, maybe better off in the long run than where you came in. And I think a lot of us are going to find that sometimes we have to hit rock bottom. Everything else has to get stripped away. So we really do some hard evaluations on what have I been counting on that I really can't count on. That's one thing about being a Christian. The Bible teaches that there's only one thing that's dependable, and that's God himself. And so he lifts others up, he puts others down. You give, you take away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. At the same time, he also gives us tools and resources, and he puts people around us to help guide us through difficult times. And so one of the things that the book of Proverbs tells us is, by the counsel of many, you make your plans to wage war. And right now you're in a battle. You're in a battle for the well-being of your family. You're in the battle for your own well-being. And quite honestly, as a society, we are in a battle to determine what we're going to be on the backside of all of this pandemic, disruption. So just a few thoughts for you today. These thoughts are a little more practical this afternoon. I'll do another video this evening, a little more faith-based. But if you would like to schedule one of those consultation times with me, 20, 30 minutes, what I'd love for you to do is just reach out to me and we'll set up a time. We'll talk over video conference. I'll show you what we're doing. We can talk through things you're doing, look at some pivot points maybe you want to make, and go from there. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.